Good evening. Washington has issued a temporary waiver allowing countries to buy Russian oil that's already stranded at sea, a move aimed at easing pressure on global energy markets as the conflict with Iran continues.
Oil prices eased in Asia after Washington issued a temporary waiver allowing countries to purchase Russian oil already stranded at sea. US officials say the measure is meant to stabilize global energy markets after the conflict with Iran disrupted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz and pushed oil prices above $100 a barrel. The 30-day license allows the delivery and sale of Russian crude loaded on vessels as of March 12th and remains valid until April 11th. Russian presidential envoy Kirill Dmitriev said the waiver could affect around 100 million barrels of Russian crude currently at sea. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the recent rise in oil prices was a short-term disruption and argued it would ultimately bring long-term economic benefits for the United States. The move may boost oil supply but could put Washington at odds with its allies over sanctions on Russia. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said after a call with G7 leaders that now was not the time to relax sanctions against Russia despite the energy crisis. The United States has also announced a release of 172 million barrels from its Strategic Petroleum Reserve as part of a broader International Energy Agency coordinated release of 400 million barrels. The agency says the conflict in the Middle East is already creating the biggest oil supply disruption in history.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has met French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris, where the two leaders discuss strengthening European support for Kyiv, increasing pressure on Moscow, and the prospects for future security guarantees and peace talks. While Zelensky arrived in Paris on Friday seeking reassurance from one of Kyiv's key Western partners as global attention shifts towards the conflict in the Middle East. Well, the widening crisis has raised concerns about weapons supply, particularly air defense systems, as regional tensions place new demands on existing stockpiles. Zelensky warned Ukraine's shortage of air defense missiles could worsen. Okay, to help us make sense of these developments, I'm joined now by Ines Burrell, a geopolitical analyst who's joining us from Torquay in Devon, which of course is in the United Kingdom. Ines, very good indeed to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight on PrimeTime. Very interesting this, isn't it? Russia being brought in from the cold, so to speak. How significant a development is this now that oil already stranded at sea can actually be sold?
Well, it's both significant and at the same time not that significant, because we are talking about roughly 124 million barrels. And believe it or not, that represents just one day's worth of global oil supply. So is it enough to move global oil prices? Just a few days ago, the release of 4 times that amount from global strategic reserves didn't make a dent. So by all accounts, Russian oil sitting out in the sea might not be such a significant market intervention at all. As to impact on Russia, that's not that straightforward, because Russian budget doesn't collect tax at the point of sale. It happens at the point of extraction. So tax on oil was calculated long before the current oil crisis started, and regardless of whether that oil was ever sold. And that means that if this crisis reduces global oil prices, the taxes on current Russian oil production will be reduced as well. So Russian budget suffers more from low oil prices than from low sales.
And Ines, what do you think is really going on here? Is this simply a technical step to steady global markets, or are we seeing something a bit different going on, perhaps a quiet easing of sanctions on Russia?
This is pretty much what Trump administration has been doing for the past 2 weeks. They've been trying to figure out how to lower the global oil prices. I believe this is just the same of the same. essentially, what they have been doing, they've been using media messaging to bring down oil prices, using strategic phone calls to Putin to lower the prices again. And when that starts slipping and no longer works, then there is released the biggest strategic petroleum reserve in history. Now, that didn't make much difference either, but they're trying to do that. At the same time, as to easing of sanctions in general, honestly, nobody really knows what the United States' stance on Russia is. On the same night when Trump spoke to Putin, Ukraine attacked a very important microelectronics plant in Bryansk, and that was done with Storm Shadow cruise missiles. And the use of those requires American permission. So on the one hand, they are sort of easing the sanctions. At the same time, they're very happy with certain plants being bombed. So it really is a 50-50 question. And any analyst telling you that we know what the US is doing about Russia will just be fibbing.
Yeah, okay, very interesting. And at the same time, of course, you mentioned Ukraine. We've got Volodymyr Zelensky meeting Emmanuel Macron in Paris. What do you think both leaders want from that particular meeting right now?
Generally, meetings like this serve two purposes. You need to get out a certain message, and you need to develop common strategy. At the moment, of course, Russian oil waiver is an important subject because it can provide significant financial benefit to Russia. But at the same time, there's also the issue of peace in Middle East. So Zelensky had to show that Ukraine is in strong position, despite the fact that any sanctions might be eased from Russia, and that it has plenty of allies, and that there is large interest in Ukrainian military tech. As to development of any common strategies, that will happen behind closed doors, and basically it depends on where Zelensky will head after Paris. Considering how long it takes to get out of Ukraine, he usually travels to several capital cities. So we will see the full picture when we know where he's going to make his stops.
And Ines, do you think there's any sense in which the war in the Middle East has caused Ukraine to almost slightly slip down the agenda in some of these areas? You know, it's an awful thing to say because so many people are suffering in both conflicts. But do you get a sense that he's keen to make sure that it remains top of the to-do list in Europe?
Essentially, yes. But you have to remember that this war has been going for 4 years. Or at least the full-scale section of it. Nobody can keep attention this long. However, it is very important to the European continent, so we can never go very far away from this subject. And besides, the war in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine are both essentially the same. They're the fruit of the collapse of international law. This new war showed that Ukraine, as it turns out, has some very serious cards in the shape of anti-drone systems and the whole drone ecosystem. And Middle East might have treated the war in Ukraine as not our war when Iran was helping Russia with drones and missiles. But in the end, the war caught up with them. So all wars are our wars. So yes, the focus shifts, but it never goes very far.
And finally, Ines, when you look at what's going on in Washington, you look at what's going on in Brussels, is there a joined-up policy, a sort of a clear plan for Ukraine now on the part of the West, do you think?
Well, the West is no longer the same thing we used to think as the West. It has essentially split. What we now have is Europe and its allies, and then we have the United States and its allies, although we can't really imagine who has stuck out for the right there except for Israel. So if you check the UN resolutions, the United States routinely sides with Russia. So US strategy is separate from European strategy, and frankly, US strategy makes very little sense unless we admit that the US has other goals than Europe does. And then it makes sense. Europe, on the other hand, continues supporting Ukraine politically, militarily, and financially to the extent they can afford. It's largely understood that unless they help Ukraine to stop this war in Ukraine, they will have to stop it later in Europe proper, and that will cost a lot more. But their actions are still very much behind that understanding.
Ines, we thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your analysis very much indeed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the top business news stories of the day with Andy Mioch. We'll be right back.
Long before partition, Pakistanis were singled out, attacked, and forced from their homes.
More than 200,000 Muslims were eliminated through massacres, through displacement.
In all Indian states, the communities are being oppressed, and the Indian Army is committing atrocities against them.
I left Indian-occupied Kashmir and came to Azad Kashmir on foot.
We cannot even go to the graves of our loved ones. We cannot even pray for them.
What is the fault of the Kashmiri people?
Kashmir is the place where partition never ended.
The region of Kashmir is between 3 nuclear powers.
If a nuclear war breaks out here, not only the South Asia, but the entire world will be affected.
If India believes that people of Jammu and Kashmir are with them, let them go for their referendum tomorrow.
For a Kashmiri, what matters the most is Azadi, is the right of self-determination. Azadi from Indian hegemony.
Do you still believe diplomacy is keeping pace with the growing complexity of modern conflicts?
Israel, together with the US and Iran, it will end with negotiations, with dialogue. More time and more time, then you end the negotiations and go for war.
Miscalculation could trigger broader confrontation in the Middle East.
Absolutely, it is a catastrophe. Arab countries, they all told the US side, they told Israel, do not launch an attack on Iran.
Are you today more optimistic or maybe more cautious about the global peace in the near future?
I'm just very disillusioned, not optimistic with the current situation.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. One important note to this.
I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on November.
Reporting from Paris, Paris, Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv, Washington, London, Moscow, Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, Port Aiyu.
A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Now, Andy Mioch is with us with the very latest business news stories. Andy's, what's on your agenda tonight?
Well, Guy, we'll be taking a look at what kind of an impact did this U.S. decision to lift sanctions on Russian seaborne crude have on oil prices around the world. The European markets are in for a second consecutive weekly loss, and there's also some news out of the auto and avio industries. So let's have a look. First up, the United States has temporarily waived sanctions on Russia stranded at sea as Trump administration officials attempt to reverse a surge in prices. Now, despite the measure, the international benchmark, Brent crude, remained over $100 a barrel in early trading on Friday.
Oil prices headed for weekly gains as of Friday, despite the US trying to ease supply concerns by issuing a 30-day license for countries to buy Russian oil and petroleum products stranded at sea. Brent futures for May rose 1% to $101.4 a barrel at 7:30 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, heading for a weekly increase of nearly 10%. US West Texas Intermediate crude for April was up by 1% at $96.6 a barrel, poised for more than a 6% uptick for the week. The United States issued a 30-day waiver for countries to buy sanctioned Russian oil and petroleum products currently stranded at sea, in what Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said was a step to stabilize global energy markets roiled by the Iran war. The move was the latest attempt by President Donald Trump's administration to tame energy prices after the US and Israeli strikes on Iran and the subsequent response by Tehran widened regional tensions and paralyzed shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting vital Middle East oil and gas flows and sending energy prices higher.
As the Iran war goes on, its impact is felt across markets. European stocks opened the week's final trading session in negative territory. Most major sectors are in the red, except energy.
European shares extended their declines on Friday and were headed for a second consecutive weekly loss, as escalating conflict in the Middle East and inflation worries dented risk appetite. The pan-European benchmark, Stoxx 600, was down 0.5% by 9:24 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, with all regional indexes in the red. All major regional bourses were also set to log weekly declines. Economically sensitive banks led sectoral losses with a 1.9% fall. Standard Chartered and HSBC, the two global banks most exposed to the war with Iran, according to Reuters analysis, extended their monthly declines to 13% and 14% respectively. Conversely, the energy sector inched 0.5% higher and by far the best weekly performer. Oil giants BP and Shell both added above 1.5% as crude prices traded above $100 a barrel. Global markets extended their declines this week as the US-Israel war on Iran approached the two-week mark with heavy exchanges of drone and missile strikes across the region. Markets are bracing for a drawn-out conflict, with Trump escalating rhetoric against Iran and Tehran pledging to keep the Strait of Hormuz shut, fueling concerns over energy-driven inflation and pushing traders to rein in rate cut bets.
Moving away from the war, Canada and Mexico defended their trilateral trade agreement with the U.S. following Washington's threats to withdraw from the $2 trillion pact. After talks in Mexico City, Canadian and Mexican officials have said that maintaining the trilateral U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement was a priority for their nations.
Canadian and Mexican officials on Thursday reaffirmed the importance of maintaining the trilateral free trade agreement between their countries and the U.S. Amid signals from Washington, it could be interested in bilateral deals. At a news conference in Mexico City, Canadian Ambassador Cameron McKay and Mexican Deputy Foreign Trade Minister Rosendo Gutierrez said maintaining the three-way agreement remained a priority for both countries, as trucks were lining up near the customs crossing on the US-Mexico border as trade tensions resurfaced. US President Donald Trump's administration announced on Wednesday 2 new trade investigations involving alleged forced labor and industrial overcapacity among 16 major trade partners. According to the US Trade Representative, the Section 301 investigation could result in new tariffs on China, the European Union, India, Japan, South Korea and Mexico before the northern summer.
Next up, Japanese carmaker Honda said it may book an operating loss of as much as $3.6 billion for the financial year ending this month due to mounting costs related to its electric vehicle strategy. The company said it aims to enhance its current hybrid lineup to improve profitability.
Honda warned on Thursday it would tumble to a loss of as much as $3.6 billion this year, hit by the widening cost of restructuring its struggling EV business. The Japanese automaker now expects to lose as much as 570 billion yen or $3.6 billion in the year to the end of March, versus a previous forecast for a profit of $3.4 billion. Japan's second-largest automaker becomes the latest global car company to warn of a multi-billion-dollar hit due to cooling demand for EVs, especially in the United States. Honda CEO Toshihiro Mibe told a news conference the automaker would scrap development of some planned EV models and instead put more effort into hybrids, demand for which has surged in the US and elsewhere.
Still with the auto industry, Rivian will launch sales of its crucial R2 all-electric vehicle this spring with a performance model that includes a 530-kilometer range. The cheaper entry-level version of the car is expected by late 2027.
Rivian Automotive has announced it will launch sales of its R2 all-electric vehicle this spring with a roughly $58,000 special edition model. The first of the R2 midsize vehicles will be a performance model with a launch package that includes a 530-kilometer range, dual motors, special attributes, and lifetime access to its advanced driver assistance system. Rivian has been touting a less expensive entry-level version of the vehicle starting at $45,000, but it said that model won't be available until late 2027. The R2 is considered a make-or-break moment for Rivian after the company has lost billions of dollars and seen waning demand for its current vehicles, the R1 SUV and pickup, and an electric delivery van. Rivian founder and CEO RJ Scaringe has promised investors that the R2 will be a turning point for the company's profits, sales, and technologies. The EV maker is also aiming to launch hands-free, eyes-off driving to better compete against US EV industry leader Tesla.
And finally, in aviation news, Qantas has agreed to pay $74 million over claims that it should have issued cash refunds for canceled flights during the COVID-19 pandemic. The class action lawsuit was made on behalf of passengers whose flights were canceled and who've received travel credits instead of cash.
Australia's Qantas Airways said on Friday it would pay out $74 million to settle a class action, alleging it misled customers and failed to provide ticket refunds for flights cancelled during the COVID pandemic. The class action on behalf of Australian passengers related to international and domestic flights cancelled by Qantas between 2020 and 2022. Qantas had provided flight credits instead of cash refunds. The deal is subject to court approval and will see the money to fund cash refunds paid to an administrator in the first half of 2027, Qantas said. Echo Law, which brought the class action, alleged Qantas had unlawfully benefited from customers by holding for years a very significant amount of customer funds that ought to have been refunded. The law firm said the court will provide details of how customers can claim refunds in coming weeks.
And that is the wrap on business for tonight. Back to you, Guy.
What about travel and mobility this week, Andy? Very interesting stuff indeed. Thank you very much. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the growing pressures facing cities as the World Urban Forum prepares to bring global leaders to Baku. Stay with us. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Long before partition, Pakistanis were singled out, attacked, and forced from their homes.
More than 200,000 Muslims were eliminated through massacres, through displacement.
In all Indian states, the communities are being oppressed, and the Indian Army is committing atrocities against them.
I left Indian-occupied Kashmir and came to Azad Kashmir on foot.
We cannot even go to the graves of our loved ones. We cannot even pray for them.
What is the fault of the Kashmiri people?
Kashmir is the place where partition never ended.
The region of Kashmir is between three nuclear powers.
If a nuclear war breaks out here, not only the South Asia, but the entire world will be affected.
If India believes that people of Jammu and Kashmir are with them, let them go for their referendum tomorrow.
For a Kashmiri, what matters the most is Azadi, is the right of self-determination. Azadi from Indian hegemony.
Welcome back to Primetime. Now, coming up, we've got a big interview for you from the Global Baku Forum. But first, tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan are worsening tonight, with both sides trading fresh accusations after overnight attacks that mark a major escalation. Taliban authorities accuse Pakistan of carrying out overnight airstrikes that hit civilian homes in Kabul and a fuel depot near Kandahar airport. Officials say at least 6 people were killed, including women and children, in what they describe as a major escalation in the worst fighting between the two neighbors in years.
All the children were asleep at night. I was awake. Around 12 a.m., we heard the sound of an airplane, and 3 to 4 seconds later, the whole house went dark. Everywhere was filled with smoke, and all the windows and glass were shattered. The children were sitting in their room and blood was flowing from their heads and faces. I quickly took them out of the house into the yard because the house was damaged and it was dangerous. About half an hour later, I realized that I was injured too. Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid said the strike near Kandahar airport hit a fuel depot belonging to private airline Kam Air and warned the attacks would not go unanswered.
Pakistan, however, said its military carried out successful airstrikes on 4 alleged militant hideouts in Kabul, Kandahar and Paktia province. Afghanistan's defense ministry said it later responded with drone strikes on a Pakistani military base in the northern city of Kohat, claiming heavy damage.
Well, to help us understand the political implications of these latest developments between Afghanistan and Pakistan, I'm joined now by Ashfaq Ahmed, a political analyst who's joining us from Punjab in Pakistan. Ashfaq, very good indeed to see you there. Thank you for joining us on PrimeTime. Let's just start with looking at what Pakistan says it targeted. Officials are citing militant hideouts. How is this operation more widely being explained to the public in Pakistan?
Thank you for having me, and good evening from Pakistan. Okay, there are two different wings that we have. We have the Interior Ministry and we have military spokesperson, General Ahmad Sharif Chaudhry. So both of them, in their different press conferences, they have explained that Pakistan military or the Pakistan Air Force, it has targeted militant hideouts, particularly the TTP, which is termed as Fitna al-Khawarij by Pakistan military and the government. And moreover, these operations which are carried out inside Afghanistan are intelligence based. So they when carry out these attacks, they target specifically the ammunition depots of the militants, which use these arms or ammunition against Pakistan while they carry out terrorist attacks inside Pakistan. So this is the overall situation, and moreover, if you talk about the background of this particular tension, which has entered into the third week, starting on 26th of February, these Afghan terrorists, they launched different attacks. For instance, the first attack was carried out inside a Shia mosque, wherein 73 people were martyred and another 173 were injured. And moreover, then there had been suicide attacks on Pakistan military convoys and Pakistan military officials. So the point is that these attacks, which are carried out inside Afghanistan, are intelligence-based, targeted against militants of TTP and the ISK Khorasan province, their ammunition depots, training camps. So this is the explanation which has been provided by the government of Pakistan.
Taliban authorities, I guess, as you'd expect, have got a slightly different perspective. They say civilian homes were hit, women, children have been killed. How serious are these accusations for Pakistan diplomatically, do you think?
Okay, Taliban not only have launched proxies or proxy attacks against Pakistan by using terrorist groups, but they have also launched a drone strike inside Pakistan. And now this is the third weapon which they are using, and that is the diplomatic weapon. So they're trying to build pressure on Pakistan from international community and international organizations such as the United Nations, as United Nations investigate the human rights violation. As far as Pakistani Western partners are concerned, they do believe in counter-terrorism operation, but at the same time, they have a great regard for human rights. And this particular propaganda, which has been launched by Afghan Taliban or Taliban regime, can bring Pakistan under pressure from the international community, from Western partners, and the neighboring state, which include the Chinese and the Russian, and the Pakistan close ally or strategic partner, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. So this is a diplomatic weapon which is being used by Taliban to undermine Pakistan intelligence-based counter-terrorism strike against terrorists.
Yeah, as you say, Kabul says it's already responded with these retaliatory drone strikes, including on a Pakistani military base in Kohat. How significant is that retaliation? And what does it tell you about the military strategy, the appetite for conflict at the moment?
Okay, so it has two different dimensions. One is the tactics which are being utilized, and the other is the escalation of this particular conflict. The Afghan Taliban, they have used these kamikaze drones or suicide drones against Pakistani military installation. And some of the reports recently were shared on Pakistani social media that one of the drone has been targeted inside Islamabad, which was which was kamikaze drone perhaps, and it was in search of a target. So that has been neutralized by Pakistan. Okay, coming back to the attack which was carried out by Afghan Taliban on Kohat Air Base, or a military installation. So it is deep inside the Pakistan territory. The area Kohat, it is around 120 to 130 kilometers away from the Afghan border. So it causes concern that if this drone has deep penetrated inside Pakistan, where was Pakistan anti-drone mechanism? Why didn't it function? Why didn't this neutralize? Secondly, it is perhaps a clear message from Afghan Taliban that they are ready to escalate the tension or the conflict. So they are basically deliberately escalating this particular conflict, or they're moving upward on the escalation ladder. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has carry out different measures, which I just stated that one of the drones has been neutralized in Islamabad. So this is the overall scenario.
Yeah, as you say, this escalation has been building steadily. What about hope for de-escalation? Are there any mechanisms, any neutral actors that could help mediate, perhaps, at this point?
Recently, we had been hearing reports that Chinese special envoy for Pakistan and Afghanistan had been making effort. He had been closely interacting with the Afghan Taliban and Pakistani government officials. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is that Qatar had already made efforts in February. And similarly, Turkey has also made efforts. But the point is that whether Taliban will, adhere to these will adhere to the outcome of the negotiation, because they have violated the terms and condition of the Doha Agreement, which they signed with the Americans, and now the recent agreement between Pakistan and Afghanistan. That has all the spirit of that particular agreement has also been violated. Now the point is whether they will be honoring their agreement in future or not. So that is a tricky question which we have to look forward.
And Mr. Ahmed, just for our viewers that may not all be quite so familiar with this conflict, just give us the background, the context as to what has led to this situation that we're now faced with.
Okay, so this particular problem, it started in 2021 after the withdrawal of America from Afghanistan. Pakistan believed that once Taliban will come into power in Afghanistan, we will be having a pro-Pakistani government. But later on, Afghan Taliban, they start using Tehrik-e-Taliban of Pakistan against Pakistan. They launch attacks on Pakistani military installation and Pakistani security officials. And moreover, they are having safe haven inside Afghanistan. So that is the problem. When Pakistan approached the Afghan Taliban to neutralize these actors, however, the Afghan Taliban, they did not carry out any measures against to prevent them from launching attacks against Pakistan. Wherein Pakistan has to carry out retaliatory strikes. As I stated earlier, that in February there was suicide bombing inside a Shia mosque in Pakistan, which resulted in the killing of 73 Pakistanis. So that led to the statement which was issued by Pakistani Defense Minister Khwaja Asif, stating that Pakistan is now going to launch an open war. After the statement, Pakistan launched attack on the ammunition depots inside Afghanistan, which are now used by Afghan Taliban, the hideouts of TTP and the ISK Khorasan province. So this is the background of the fresh or ongoing tension between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And one more point, and that is the Durand line, which divides Pakistan and Afghanistan. So Afghan Taliban, they do not recognize the Durand line, while Pakistan states that the line which was created by British Empire in 1893, it is the official border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. they want to stretch that. They want to stretch their territory up to the Punjab province. It means that they want to, the Afghan Taliban or the Afghan government, they want to stretch their territory 120 or in some cases 250 kilometers from the current Afghan-Pakistan border to the Punjab province. So this is the background. They want to annex Pakistani territory, and they are using proxies and other terrorist groups against Pakistan.
Mr. Ahmed, we thank you very much indeed for that analysis. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at Europe's political divisions and the debate over cooperation in a more fragmented world. Do stay with us.
Long before partition, Pakistanis were singled out, attacked, and forced from their homes.
More than 200,000 Muslims were eliminated through massacres, through displacement.
In all Indian states, the communities are being oppressed, and the Indian Army is committing atrocities against them.
I left Indian-occupied Kashmir and came to Azad Kashmir on foot.
We cannot even go to the graves of our loved ones. We cannot even pray for them.
What is the fault of the Kashmiri people?
Kashmir is the place where partition never ended.
The region of Kashmir is between three nuclear powers.
If a nuclear war breaks out here, not only the South Asia, but the entire world will be affected.
If India believes that people of Jammu and Kashmir are with them, let them go for their referendum tomorrow.
For a Kashmiri, what matters the most is Azadi, is the right of self-determination. Azadi from Indian hegemony.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Do you still believe diplomacy is keeping pace with the growing complexity of modern conflicts?
Israel, together with the US and Iran, it will end with negotiations, with dialogue. More time and more time, then you end the negotiations and go for war.
Miscalculation could trigger broader confrontation in the Middle East.
Absolutely, it is a catastrophe. Arab countries, they all told the US side, they told Israel, do not launch an attack on Iran.
Are you today more optimistic or maybe more cautious about the global peace in the near future?
I'm just very disillusioned, not optimistic with the current situation.
Welcome back to Primetime. Good to have you with us. Across Europe, leaders are grappling with a difficult political moment, from divisions within the European Union to wider questions about cooperation in a more fragmented world. Now, those issues have also been part of the discussions here in Baku this week. Earlier at the Global Baku Forum, I had the opportunity to speak to Borut Pahor, former president of Slovenia. Let's take a look, and we'll be back after the break with some news from Canada. President Pahor, it's very nice to see you again. We spoke, I think, last year. Just like to begin with your reflections on this year's Global Baku Forum and perhaps some of the themes that you and the other leaders have been discussing so far.
Well, it couldn't be more important than it is. Talking about peaceful transition to the new global order is something which is very important. Russia is involved in war with Ukraine. United States is deeply involved, it seems, in war with Iran. Two superpowers are using force to develop their political and military and economic power, but China does not. And the intriguing question is if this initiative that we have been just talking about at the forum is something that is promising to the peaceful transition to the next order. Not just this issue, but other also. They are very important for the future of mankind. So I think this Baku Global Forum comes in a historic moment when a couple of my colleagues are talking about World War III, which is, I mean, something that 5-10 years ago nobody would talk about. And now the question is if this, transition period will finish by using force, or we will be capable by dialogue to make a successful, efficient, multilateral international order or not. So Baku is doing its best at the moment.
If you look at social media, multilateralism has got out of fashion, it seems. Although right now perhaps it's what we need more than ever.
That's correct. You're right. I think right now in this very moment, we maybe do need it mostly in last 80 years. So everybody sees that it is challenged. And once again, the question is, we will go to the next phase of, let's say so, a peaceful time in international order by using force to get to the new structures, or we will be capable to get there without using force by dialogue and peaceful means. This remains open.
And transition is something where you have vast experience. I mean, it'd be interesting to reflect on your own experience of EU integration, membership, then of course the Euro adoption in 2007. What is it about that experience that you think could be particularly useful advice now as we stand at this very difficult moment?
Well, I would like to point on one issue that, in my view, it is extremely important, and this is reconciliation. So we have to reconcile with each other to bring past back to the past and use our force to build the future together, So I've focused during my term in office as Prime Minister and the President to this extremely important challenge. Let us see how this will work for the global international community. It seems now there is a complete lack of dialogue. I mean, complete lack. There is, but not successful one. So I would suggest to global powers and all others, Slovenia among them, to try to reconcile on issues that are very sensitive, and to try to get those elements of our national interests that are common, and that we can then, bridge this period, period of transition in a peaceful way, building on those elements that they are, for everyone, good for everyone.
And it's a difficult moment for the EU in one sense, isn't it? Because you can see, we've seen recently Spain taking a notably different position on US and Israel, or perhaps Norway, Ireland are also supportive of that, others taking an alternate point of view. Well, I suppose there has to be space for different perspectives, but how does the EU try and hold all this together?
Well, there is one difference which is absolutely dominant, decisive. Look, United States, there is a president, which is a very powerful figure. In Russia, there is a president, which is a very powerful figure. In China, there is a president, which is a very powerful figure. Well, in European Union, you do not have the president. You have the president of the Commission. This is completely different political structure. What I would like to point is that we need changes in European Union. It has been a long time ago that I started to talk about the United States of Europe. Not that that would be just another United States, as United States of America will be a different structure of United States of Europe, but would be a union with a strong leadership. Okay, we should have a consensus on this. There is no consensus on this, you're right. But I think, that is my wish maybe, more than my analysis, that slowly, step by step, we will go there. Because there is no other alternative for European Union to survive as a global leader than to be some sort of sui generis confederation or even federation. We will see what future will bring.
So does that go hand in hand with enlargement? That it's a tightening?
Unfortunately not.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting.
I think if we would have a strong personality at the top, as we have it in other superpowers, probably she or he would, in this very moment, would say, let's go there, let's go to the Western Balkans, because the Western Balkans, in a way, it is a part of, our values and so on and so on. But we do not do that. We are postponing the enlargement to the Western Balkans. Let us hope that the intention to get closer Ukraine and Moldova, maybe Iceland, that Brussels will keep its word. But this remains to be seen. So if we will be capable to build a European Union as United States of Europe, so some sort of sui generis federal state or union or confederal state or union, I think this will enable us to reflect on enlargement process differently. Now it's a completely technical process. You should go through the process. There are conditions and all that stuff. It's very difficult. It has been more than 20 years now since the last enlargement of European Union. If we would be a superpower, we would see, the space of Western Balkans, the space of 6 countries there, as space which belongs to the European Union. And we would go there without very strong, conditions. Same goes for Ukraine. Same goes for Moldova. So this is, I think, that makes the difference between European Union as it is and European Union that could be in the future.
To be more decisive like that, though, Mr. President, don't you need to be more accountable? Does the relationship with voters? Do they need some kind of more direct democracy in order to be more decisive, as you say?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. It would be a great signal that, listen, I've been a member of European Parliament, so with 751 colleagues, we've been the only ones to be elected to the House. Commission is not elected by the people. Council is not elected directly by the people. The president of the council is not elected by the people. If we would have at least one, that would be seen as a leader at the top of European Union, that would make a difference in the future. So basically I'm saying, in my view, the way to go is to be much more connected, not just in economy, but also in politics, in institutions, than we are at this very moment. By the way, a year and a half ago, the House has voted on the resolution to maybe reflect on a possibility to have one another this debate on the future of Europe. Like we had it back in 2003 and 4, but then ended with referenda in I think in France, that then in Netherlands I think, that ended the process of the new European Constitution. So I think basically because of the global disorder, European Union will get enough political will and consensus, I hope, in the future, that we'll start to think about reshaping itself as a modern global power, which is not at this very moment.
And we've seen conflicts have been contentious issues for the EU, different views amongst different member states, but also some very difficult issues such as migration that have not only provided logistical challenges, but also have emboldened the populist right across Europe. How does Brussels get to grips with a problem like that?
Well, the populism is the reflection of the lack of credibility of political correctness. This idea of political correctness had built the European Union, to try via dialogue to get some sort of common position on different issues. But because of the lack of the credibility of political elites debating those issues, suddenly people just, do not believe in the dialogue as it is, and they are very much in favor of the populist. They have simple solutions to the very complex problems, and this is the problem. Migration is not a simple problem. It's not a simple issue. It's a very complex one. At this very moment, I think there is a growing consensus that we should stop, almost any migration whatsoever. This will not work. Illegal migration is a different thing. We have to accept this challenge, and I think European is doing its best at this very moment on this issue. But we have struggled until now.
And finally, I just want to ask you about this region. Last time we spoke in depth about some of the things that this region was pioneering in diplomacy. Since you were here last year, of course, the relationship between Azerbaijan and the US has strengthened. The relationship between Azerbaijan and Iran, though, also strong. There is an ability in this part of the world to hold together dialogue between conflicting actors and to find ways to solve problems. Is that something that you think is a kind of an example where there might be lessons for the rest of the world?
Well, by the way, the President of the European Council has been just here visiting Azerbaijan, which is a strong signal, and I am very happy that it is so. Central Asia is a stable part of the world. Okay, now we are watching this war in Iran. We will see what will be in the future there. But basically, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and all other countries in the region, they are developing very fastly, more or less without using force. They are capable to, develop their self with partners worldwide, not just China, not just India. I'm fascinated by the development in this part of the world. 30, 40 years ago, this could be just another forgotten place in Soviet Union. Now it's a completely different picture of the future for these countries. It's amazing.
Well, Mr. President, it's been great speaking to you again. We thank you very much for joining us on
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Do you still believe diplomacy is keeping pace with the growing complexity of modern conflicts?
Israel, together with the US and Iran, it will end with negotiations, with dialogue. More time and more time, then you end the negotiations and go for war.
Miscalculation could trigger broader confrontation in the Middle East.
Absolutely, it is a catastrophe. Arab countries, they all told the US side, they told Israel, do not launch an attack on Iran.
Are you today more optimistic or maybe more cautious about the global peace in the near future?
I'm just very disillusioned, not optimistic with the current situation.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a $25.7 billion plan to strengthen Canada's military in the Arctic and reduce reliance on the United States. Well, the initiative will expand military airfields, build 4 support hubs, upgrade airports and improve roads connecting the Arctic to southern Canada. Currently, the region has 4 small airfields and around 2,000 soldiers. The announcement comes amid rising tensions with the US following tariffs and remarks about Canadian territory. Carney said the plan will also protect sovereignty and create new opportunities for northern communities.
With this plan, we are taking control of our future. We will no longer rely on others to defend our Arctic security or to fuel our economy. We're taking full responsibility for defending our sovereignty. And we are unleashing a range of new economic opportunities for the over 140,000 Northerners who will benefit from stronger, more connected communities, more opportunities, and a higher standard of living.
Well, to help us understand the political thinking behind that strategy, I'm joined now by Turkan Bozkurt, Deputy Director at the IPEX Centre, joining us from Montreal. Turkan, thank you very much for joining us on Primetime tonight. There's a lot going on in the world at the moment, to say the least, isn't there? What do you think is driving this decision behind this pretty significant level of investment?
Hello, it's great to be here. I think it's important to note that this money is not new. It was put forward in 2022. The announcement simply lays out the blueprint for what they're actually doing with the money. And Prime Minister Mark Carney is going to be spending $35 billion investment in specifically on the infrastructure for its military air bases and 2 northern airports over the next decade. I think there are 3 converging forces driving this. Politically and economically, Canada and the US's relationship, as you mentioned, has been facing challenges. President Trump's tariffs and his musings about annexing Canada have severely strained the bilateral relationship, which makes Ottawa recalibrate its security assumptions. Militarily, CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Services, have testified before the Parliament that Russia and China are actively seeking footholds in the Arctic, with China deploying research vessels for intelligence gathering and Russia maintaining heavy conventional military interests. And I think economically also, climate change is opening new shipping routes and exposing untapped critical mineral reserves, which makes Arctic both a strategic and a commercial prize. I think the plan is a direct response to all 3 simultaneously, and Canada is trying to become a more independent country like Sweden or Finland.
Yeah, I mean, the plan does pretty openly talk about reducing reliance on the US, doesn't it? I mean, what do you think is behind that politically? And also, I mean, do you think it's kind of risky doing that? We've still got a few years left at least, of Donald Trump in the White House.
Yeah, I think there is a seismic shift in Canadian strategic doctrine. Canada has traditionally relied on U.S. to help monitor the Arctic, which covers about 4.4 million square kilometers of land and sea, which is, for reference, larger than the country of India. I think we will definitely still need help from our neighbors in the United States, but Carney is explicitly saying that we cannot rely on other nations for our own security and prosperity. And I think it's also important to keep in mind Prime Minister Carney's speech in Davos, which took place a few weeks ago, about the changing world order. And this has resulted Donald Trump withdrawing Canada's invitation from the Board of Peace. So I think Canada is really trying to get its resources and minerals from the Arctic, but also simultaneously use it as a deterrence message and a negotiating pressure with Washington.
Yeah, as you say, so much attention on the far north. I mean, the Arctic's becoming more strategically important globally, isn't it? With new shipping routes, growing competition. How much of this move do you think is about that wider geopolitical shift?
In my opinion, it's almost entirely about that wider geopolitical shift. China and Russia have specifically identified the Arctic as a key area of cooperation. And Carney himself framed it in those terms, noting that climate change is warming Canada's Arctic nearly 3 times faster than the global average. And this is a shift that these great powers are looking to use or exploit. And the resource dimension is absolutely huge, not only because of the natural gas reserves, but significant rare earths, nickel, cobalt, and platinum group metals that are available there could provide could make Canada provide 30 of the 50 critical minerals in which China currently holds, I would say, near world domination. And as you mentioned, there is a shipping revolution also underway. China's Polar Silk Road strategy has demonstrated that the Northern Sea Route can cut shipping times from China to Europe in nearly half. And there is a cooperation with Russia as well, where Russia controls the permits, the icebreaker support, and infrastructure along that road. And Canada is looking to be a part of that, and also at the same time advance Canada's NATO commitments on defense spending and improve its access.
Yeah, and of course, looming large is this question of sovereignty, isn't it? Canada have long spoken about protecting its Arctic sovereignty. Do you think this plan actually strengthens Ottawa's ability to enforce that sovereignty on the ground?
Yeah, I think I do think that it makes a meaningful difference, but there is a huge gap that still remains there. Canada has 4 rudimentary Arctic airfield that accommodates maybe about 6 fighters each and around 2,000 soldiers. This is a remarkably thin presence for a 4.4 million square kilometers. And much of the budget will be directed at airfield improvements, fuel facilities, and ammunition storage. So it could allow Canadian Armed Forces to defend the Arctic without allied help. But I think we will definitely need more help from our neighbors in the United States, because it's important to remember that for decades, Canada's military and defense spending has been very minimal due to our reliance to our next door neighbor. The spending that Mark Carney has said, it begins this process, but compared to our competitors of Russia and China, who maintain their interest in the Arctic, we are very, very far behind.
And finally, I just want to ask you about how this decision's being received inside Canada politically. I mean, is there fairly broad support for what Mr. Carney's been saying?
Yeah, as a Canadian, I must say I'm very, very personally happy with Prime Minister Carney's investment in defense. He's also shattering the stereotype in Canada that Liberals are not good with budgeting and investment. But on an analytical level, I think polling shows that Canadians are not very happy with our reliance and relations with the US currently. So Carney's framing resonates with that public mood, especially after the tariffs imposed by the US, which significantly impacted the daily life of middle and lower class Canadians. And, President Trump's 51st state remark has led this unification among Canadians and an increase in Canadian pride, with people making visible efforts to buy only Canadian goods and support their nation. We've also seen political support with this for this spending, with Northwest Territories Premier welcoming it. And also something that I think is really worth mentioning is that Indigenous leaders in Canada are also supporting this. I know there is a cautious approach from them, rightfully so, and they do challenge Ottawa to rethink how it approaches sovereignty in ways that genuinely include Indigenous rights and governance. But there's definitely a support from Indigenous communities as well. And economically, this investment, I think, brings both party interests. So there's a cross-party interest as well from the Conservatives, because it bundles defense spending with job creation and critical mineral development, infrastructure, which makes it really hard for the opposition to really oppose in the parliament. So I think the main question here shouldn't be whether Canadians support this, because they clearly do. It's the pace is the question. I think as a Canadian, I myself also ask this, but I know that everyone else is in their mind questioning whether this spending is fast enough and whether we need more.
Turkan, it's been great speaking with you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from Montreal.
Thank you, Guy.
Okay, after the break, we'll be checking in with our correspondents all around the world for the very latest developments in their regions. Do stay with us.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Do you still believe diplomacy is keeping pace with the growing complexity of modern conflicts?
Israel, together with the US and Iran, it will end with negotiations, with dialogue. More time and more time, then you end the negotiations and go for war.
Miscalculation could trigger broader confrontation in the Middle East.
Absolutely, it is a catastrophe. Arab countries, they all told the US side, they told Israel, do not launch an attack on Iran.
Are you today more optimistic or maybe more cautious about the global peace in the near future?
I'm just very disillusioned, not optimistic with the current situation.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note. To Fierce. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on November. Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
A warm welcome back to Primetime, wherever you're watching. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has admitted that appointing Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to the United States was a mistake, saying he takes full responsibility for the decision. For more on this, let's go now to A News' correspondent in Manchester.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has admitted he made a mistake in appointing Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to the United States following the release of new government documents about the controversial appointment. Speaking to journalists in Northern Ireland on Thursday, the Prime Minister said the decision was his responsibility. Starmer also repeated an apology to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, saying it was right that he personally acknowledged the error. The remarks come a day after the publication of hundreds of pages of government files detailing the vetting process that preceded Mandelson's appointment. The documents outline what was known about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein at the time and reveal concerns raised during the review process. Starmer said the material shows what officials knew when Mandelson was selected for the role and that the information prompted further questions inside government. He added that some details cannot yet be released because of an ongoing police investigation. It is not the first time the Prime Minister has described the appointment as a mistake or apologized to Epstein's victims, but the latest comments come as the government faces mounting political pressure. Opposition parties, including the Conservatives, Reform UK and the Greens, have renewed calls for Starmer to resign. The Conservatives claim there was a cover-up because two sections in the documents reserved for the PM to write comments about Mandelson's appointment were blank, raising suspicions that they had been redacted. Downing Street strongly rejected the claim. The Prime Minister's official spokesperson told reporters the government had complied fully with the document release and insisted there had been no cover-up. More documents related to the case are expected to be released in the coming weeks. According to the Prime Minister's team, they will show that Mandelson misled Starmer about the extent of his relationship with Epstein before being appointed as Britain's top diplomat in Washington. Zaina Farizadeh, A-News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
The Baku Initiative Group and the Sikh Federation International have held an event in Geneva focusing on alleged human rights violations against the Sikh community in India. A-News' Katie Wilson has more.
Hello to you from Geneva in Switzerland. We are here at the Geneva Press Club, and just wrapping up behind me is a presentation of a report which has been put together by the Sikh Federation International and the Baku Initiative Group, which expresses concern about human rights violations against the Sikh community by the Indian government, both in India and abroad. This comes after the 2023 killing of prominent Sikh activist Hardeep Singh in Canada. Now, the Canadian government is still investigating this. However, back at the time in 2023, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Canadian intelligence had found credible allegations of a link between his death and agents of the Indian state. Now, the Indian government has repeatedly denied any involvement in the murder and generally rejects these allegations of systematic human rights violations against the Sikh community, both inside India and abroad. Now, as I mentioned, this event was organised in partnership with the Baku Initiative Group, whose work centres on decolonisation and human rights advocacy. Now, today, the Sikh Federation International described this support as a human partnership. And in a statement, the Baku Initiative Group reiterated their support for the legitimate and lawful struggle of the Sikh people to protect their fundamental rights, freedoms and identity. And now that this report has been published, the Baku Initiative Group hope to raise it with organisations like the UN and the UNHCR. And over the course of today, I've been speaking to both Sikh activists and the Baku Initiative Group about the partnership and the impact that they hope this report could have.
I think it's been very heartwarming, and movements like this, you're often siloed, and people start feeling alone, that their issues are theirs alone. But when you have groups like the Baku Initiative Group, or we had today here, we had people from Kashmir and Tamil people as well, it shows solidarity. And sometimes that's more important than getting permanent missions or nation states, because often there's interests involved there. And then when you have solidarity in groups like this, a lot of that is built off of respect, honesty, and a common mission of self-determination, sovereignty, and human rights.
It was important for us to be here because there's an active threat to the democracy and country that I live in, which is Canada. There's a country, India, government of India, that is using its tentacles of violence and psychological warfare to limit the rights and freedoms of people around the world. And this is happening in Canada. I've been a victim of it. Others have been victims of it. Some psychologically, some through actual assassination and physical violence. And this is creating an issue that isn't just a threat to Canadian democracy, but a threat to any democracy where India is able to coercively control any people within that country, whether it's Switzerland, whether it's the UK, USA, or my home in Canada.
Reports of sirens at one of Turkey's most sensitive air bases have raised fresh security concerns tonight. Early on Friday morning, alarms were heard at Incirlik in southern Turkey, where Turkish and allied forces are stationed. Videos circulating online appeared to show a missile being intercepted over the nearby city of Adana. Adam Morrow reports now from Istanbul.
Sirens were heard early Friday morning at Turkey's Incirlik Air Base in the southern province of Adana, according to reports by Turkish state media. The base hosts Turkish forces, along with a contingent of American military personnel. Shortly after the sirens were reported, videos began circulating on social media that appeared to show a missile being shot down over Adana. However, local media has since described the footage as fake, saying there has been no confirmed missile activity in the area. The reports come at a time of heightened security concerns in Turkey. Earlier this week, NATO air defense systems intercepted a second ballistic missile that entered Turkish airspace within the span of several days. Following the latest interception, Turkey's defense ministry announced the deployment of a Patriot air defense system in the southern Malatya province as part of NATO's integrated air defense network. Iran, for its part, has denied responsibility for any missile launches toward Turkey, a core NATO member. In a statement released Thursday, the Turkish Defense Ministry emphasized that Incirlik is a Turkish-owned and operated military installation. It stressed that the base belongs to the Republic of Turkey and hosts Turkish F-16 fighter jets, tanker aircraft, and unmanned aerial vehicles. The ministry added that the presence of American troops at Incirlik does not mean it is an American military installation or base. Spanish, Polish, and Qatari military personnel are also stationed there as part of Allied deployments, the ministry said. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
As the US-Israel war with Iran enters its third week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the Middle East is no longer the same. He also warned that the Iran-backed Hezbollah group in Lebanon will pay a heavy price for what he calls its aggression. A News' correspondent has more now from Israel.
Prime Minister says Israel is crushing the Iranian regime as well as its proxy Hezbollah in his first press conference since the war with Iran began 30 days ago. He stated that Iran was no longer the same after nearly 2 weeks of USA-Israeli attacks. We eliminate Khamenei, Netanyahu said, and he scoffs that Khamenei's son and successor, Mujtaba Khamenei, who he called a puppet of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, cannot show his face in public. Netanyahu also said Hezbollah is feeling its force, and he warned they will pay a very heavy price for its aggression. The situation in northern Israel is very complicated. Hezbollah is sending drones and missiles several times every day. We are in the border with Lebanon. 15 people were injured in the latest attack this morning over cities of Galilee. The defense minister has been very clear. If the Lebanese government does not control Hezbollah, the IDF will carry out a ground incursion to do themselves, and thus guarantee the security of the residents along the border. Last night, there was an important meeting to assess the situation, and rumors suggest that this could happen in less than a week.
Well, with the war now nearing the 2-week mark, both sides are intensifying their exchange of attacks and warnings. Tehran says any strike on its energy infrastructure would trigger retaliation. Turad Shirililo has more from Tehran.
Reporting from the nationwide Al-Quds Day rallies in Tehran, which have been held since 1979 Islamic Revolution to mark the last Friday of fasting month of Ramadan. As the US-Israel war against Iran is approaching its third week, the conflicting parties have increased not only exchange of tit-for-tat attacks, but verbal threats as well.
Today is Quds Day in Iran. Despite what are described as brutal attacks by Israel and the United States, millions of people have taken to the streets, not only in Tehran, but across cities nationwide. The turnout reflects the Iranian people's firm resolve to support the Islamic Republic, the cause of Quds and Palestine, and the ideals that have brought the country to this point. The message is that this path will continue with strength, and that Iran's enemies will eventually be forced to recognize the power of its people.
Iranian military and security officials issued stern warnings after U.S. President Donald Trump's statement on likely strikes on the Islamic Republic's energy infrastructure. A spokesman for Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, Ebrahim Zulfaqari, warned that any small attack on Iran's energy facilities or ports would trigger a sweeping retaliatory response targeting oil and gas infrastructure across the region. In a statement read on state TV, he said, should such an aggression occur, all oil and gas infrastructure in the region linked to the U.S. and its Western allies will be set ablaze. Also, Secretary of Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, warned that the entire region could face a blackout within 30 minutes if Iran's power grid is attacked. In a strong reaction to Trump's threat of destroying Iran's power grid in 1 hour, Larijani wrote in an Arabic post on X, the entire region would be blacked out within half an hour. Meantime, Foreign Minister spokesman Ismail Baghai said on Thursday that U.S. might resort to false flag attacks on its soil using copied Iranian drones after unconfirmed reports alleging that Iran wants to target California in retaliatory UAV strikes. Turaj Shiralilu reporting from Tehran for A News.
Uzbekistan is moving ahead with plans for its first nuclear power plant, with French company Framatome potentially joining the project as the country looks to diversify its energy supply and meet rising demand. A News' correspondent in Tashkent has more now.
Uzbekistan is strengthening international partnerships as it moves forward with its first nuclear power project. During talks with the French nuclear engineering company Framatome, Uzbekistan's atomic energy agency Uzatom discussed cooperation on advanced automated control systems and technology for future nuclear facilities. Framatome is expected to contribute technological expertise, including instrumentation and control systems that monitor reactor performance and ensure safety. The systems are widely used at nuclear facilities around the world and are considered essential for the reliable operation of nuclear power plants. The plant nuclear complex in Uzbekistan will include 2 large VVER-1000 type reactors and 2 small modular reactors, with total generating capacity expected to exceed 2.1 gigawatts. Construction of a smaller modular nuclear plant has already begun in Jizakh, where 6 reactors of 55 megawatt each are planned, producing around 330 megawatts of electricity, with the first unit expected to begin operation around 2029. Nuclear energy is becoming an increasingly important topic across Central Asia. Kazakhstan, the region's largest uranium producer, also plans to build its first nuclear power plant, after a 2024 national referendum supported by about 73% of voters. The government is currently selecting technology partners. Possible suppliers include France, South Korea, China, and Russia. Experts say this project reflects a regional shift toward nuclear energy as the country seeks stable power supplies to support economic growth and reduce carbon emissions. It is Sivir Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Kazakhstan is seeing a steady rise in investment activity, with billions of dollars flowing into the economy over the past year. Well, officials say both domestic and foreign investment are increasing, supported by new economic policies and major industrial projects. Our correspondent reports now from Almaty.
Kazakhstan is seeing a noticeable increase in investment activity. Total investment in the country's economy reached about $46 billion last year, roughly 13% more than the year before. The strongest growth has been seen in the financial and insurance sectors. Foreign capital is also contributing to this momentum. In the first 9 months of last year, Kazakhstan attracted nearly $15 billion in foreign direct investment, an increase of about 11% compared with the same period a year earlier. The government says improving the investment climate remains a priority. A new investment policy concept has been introduced, setting the strategy through 2030. The focus is on attracting funding into competitive industries with higher added value and expanding sectors beyond natural resources. Kazakhstan is also continuing to use a three-level system to attract investors, working with partners internationally at the national level and across the regions. And according to the Eurasian Development Bank, Kazakhstan is now among the leaders in the Eurasian Economic Union when it comes to attracting foreign direct investment. The country accounted for nearly $1 billion in additional inflows, more than a third of the overall increase across the region. Analysts say much of this momentum is linked to new industrial projects, which are helping Kazakhstan strengthen its position as one of the region's emerging investment hubs. Fariza Kalimursina, Almaty, A News.
International leaders and experts are continuing discussions in Azerbaijan's capital, focusing on climate diplomacy, Eurasian trade links, and China's role in global governance. A News' Aytan Shukurova has more from Baku.
The second day of the 13th Global Baku Forum continues in Baku with a series of high-level discussions examining global governance, climate diplomacy, regional connectivity and sustainable development. One of the morning sessions focused on China and global governance initiatives, bringing together former European leaders, diplomats and economic experts. Discussions centered on China's growing role in shaping global governance frameworks and its impact on international economic and political cooperation.
Our world is challenging since the Second World War. What we are living is scaring, and we are here to say loudly that let's come back to diplomacy, dialogue, human rights, rule of law, and this is what matters to maintain human dignity.
Later in the morning, the forum turned to climate diplomacy with a panel titled Beyond Negotiations, the Battle to Keep COP Alive. The discussion brought together leaders of several UN climate conferences, including COP29 President Muhtar Babayev and COP31 President designate Murat Kurum, Turkey's Minister of Environment.
And I think the COP31 in Turkey will take place in very complicated time. And all of us now, we very motivated to and mobilized to actively support Turkey team to perform this big mission. Turkey and Australia, they organized a tandem and to move this climate agenda this year. But Turkey, as a host country, as a co-president, the big responsibility in this frame, and Azerbaijani team, from the lead negotiator point of view, high-level climate champion, youth climate champion, organizational issues, all of us very mobilized to assist them to perform these very important events this year. And Murat Kurum, Minister Murat Kurum already today represent his preliminary vision for climate discussions.
The situation we are experiencing today, the crisis we are facing, is largely caused by energy issues. At the same time, around 70% of the problem that climate change is trying to address is energy related. When you consider that 70% of our emissions come from energy, it becomes clear that every country needs to implement an energy policy that can sustain itself. In this regard, of course, each country has its own characteristics, but we attach great importance to renewable energy. We will take steps related to renewable energy.
Participants addressed the future of international climate negotiations and ways to strengthen international cooperation on sustainable development. Another key discussion focused on the Middle Corridor and Eurasian connectivity, examining transport and trade routes linking Asia and Europe. During the afternoon sessions, participants also examined Africa's development outlook with speakers including former European Council President Charles Michel and former Maltese Prime Minister Joseph Muscat.
This meeting should be, like others, an opportunity to address our problem, not looking back, colonization, racism, slavery, but to look back, modern economy, modern services and organization. So this meeting is a good, excellent opportunity.
The day will conclude with discussions on accelerating the United Nations 2030 agenda, focusing on inclusive economic growth. Ayten Şükürova, Natik Mehmedov, İlkin Mehdiyev, A-News.
The evacuation of foreign nationals from Iran into Azerbaijan is continuing through the Astara border checkpoint as regional tensions persist. A-News' correspondent Rakaya Bahamak is there with the latest on the situation.
Reporting from the Astara checkpoint as the evacuation process from Iran into Azerbaijan continue. As of the recent updates, at least 30 foreign nationals have arrived to the Astara checkpoint. Most of them were students and citizens from India. Some foreigners were from Russia and some from Britain. Many of those arriving have said that the crossing process here has been smooth and well coordinated by the authorities.
So till Azerbaijan embassy was with us, they helped us in every step. And also back in India, our parents have been working very hard. Like my parents, they are in Jammu and Kashmir. They went to another state, Delhi, so that they can talk to GOI and get things done easier for us.
The situation in Iran, it's very tense everywhere. Like the bombing and the missiles are everywhere. So the students are kind of very they are very tense, and they don't know what to do. That's why we are going home, and it feels nice.
All experience has been very good. The whole process went very smoothly, and I was very astonished by I think it's culture of Azerbaijan that they gave us something to eat at the border.
It has now been more than 2 weeks since the evacuation process began. According to official figures, ever since February 28th, more than 2,000 citizens from at least 72 countries have passed through this very checkpoint after leaving Iran. And Azerbaijan remain focused on ensuring that those arriving can pass through safely and continue their journey onward. Reporting from the Astara checkpoint, this is Rukaya Bashamakh, A-News.
After the Welcome back to PrimeTime. Now let's take a look at some other top stories from around the world. The United States military says a refueling aircraft has crashed in western Iraq during ongoing operations in the region. Now, US Central Command says all 6 crew members on board were killed. The military says the cause of the crash is under investigation.
The United States has confirmed that a military refueling aircraft has crashed in western Iraq during operations linked to the war against Iran. US Central Command says the aircraft was a Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker, a key refueling plane used to supply fuel to fighter jets and bombers during long-range combat missions. Officials say the crash occurred in what the military described as friendly airspace during Operation Epic Fury, the US campaign targeting Iran. 2 aircraft were involved in the incident, though only one went down while the second aircraft landed safely. The US military says the crash was not caused by hostile or friendly fire, and rescue operations are currently underway. It remains unclear whether there are casualties, but officials say at least 5 crew members were on board. Military analysts say the incident may have occurred during an aerial refueling operation, a complex maneuver that requires aircraft to fly only a few feet apart while fuel is transferred. The KC-135 plays a crucial role in combat missions, allowing fighter jets to remain airborne for extended periods. Meanwhile, missile interceptions lit up the night sky over Israel early Friday, as objects believed to be Iranian missiles were seen falling over Israeli territory. The conflict involving Iran, Israel and the United States has now entered its second week, leaving more than 2,000 people dead and disrupting the lives of millions across the region. The death toll continues to rise, with most casualties reported in Iran, while nearly 700 people have been killed in Lebanon as Israeli strikes target Hezbollah positions, forcing hundreds of thousands of residents to flee their homes.
A suspected attacker has died after a vehicle drove into a synagogue in Michigan, according to local authorities. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the incident, saying anti-Semitism knows no limits or boundaries.
On Thursday afternoon, a man drove a vehicle into a large synagogue in Michigan and was shot dead by security personnel, authorities say. The attack comes amid heightened security concerns around Jewish and Muslim places of worship, following escalating tensions in the Middle East. Officials have identified the suspect as 41-year-old Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, a naturalized US citizen born in Lebanon, who came to the United States in 2011. The incident unfolded while around 140 children were attending the synagogue's early childhood center. Security personnel confronted the driver, and authorities say the suspect was killed during the confrontation. The only reported injury was a member of the synagogue's security team who was struck by the vehicle and taken to hospital. Officials say the guard is expected to recover. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the attack, saying anti-Semitism knows no limits, and thanked US President Donald Trump for his firm stance against anti-Semitic attacks in America. Temple Israel, with over 12,000 members, also runs a childcare center for babies as young as 6 weeks. The FBI says it is leading the investigation and treating the incident as a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community. Security has been increased since the Israel-Hamas war began in October 2023, amid rising anti-Semitism. In the past 2 weeks, following military operations in Iran, law enforcement has stayed in contact with local houses of worship. On Thursday, Michigan Jewish organizations boosted security, while police patrolled other sites and cities across the US. Increased protection at Jewish centers.
Turkey says it is intensifying diplomatic efforts to prevent the Iran-centered spiral of violence from spreading across the region. Now, the comments came at the Ataturk International Peace Prize was presented to UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, highlighting Ankara's cooperation with the United Nations.
Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Thursday that Turkey is working hard to stop Iran-centered violence from spreading. He called diplomacy and dialogue the safest way to achieve lasting peace. Erdogan made the remarks while giving the Ataturk International Peace Prize to UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres in Ankara.
Türkiye olarak biz de coğrafyamızı
As Turkey, we are conducting intensive diplomatic efforts to prevent the Iran-centered spiral of violence, which risks dragging our region into total disaster, from expanding. US, Israel, Iran diplomatic activity. Despite those seeking to crush hopes and make us abandon our struggle, we will continue to work with patience and determination. As a leader who believes that development, peace and stability are impossible without justice, we will continue to support initiatives to make the UN a more inclusive institution.
Sayın Genel Sekreterin, çağımızın en büyük mezalimlerinden
Erdogan said Turkey is ready to implement the UN House project in Istanbul, bringing UN officers together and contributing to the UN 80 initiative. He stressed that peace, development and stability are not possible without justice. The ceremony ended with Erdogan presenting the Ataturk International Peace Prize to Guterres, followed by a visit to the exhibition Gazan Youth Resisting Pain with Hope.
I've seen Turkey's global leadership in championing zero-waste initiatives, and I commend the First Lady's efforts along with preparations to host the COP31 UN Climate Conference later this year.
Erdogan highlighted Turkey's UN work, including the Black Sea Grain Initiative to prevent a global food crisis and efforts to restore peace in Ukraine. He praised Guterres' stance on Gaza, thanked the UN for earthquake support and noted cooperation on climate projects like the Zero Waste Project and the upcoming COP31 in Istanbul. Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary-General, said the horrific attack on October 7th cannot be justified, noting that ongoing investigations and forthcoming reports aim to clarify the situation.
US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth claims Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is wounded and likely disfigured, suggesting the country's leadership is in disarray as tensions with Iran continue to escalate.
We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. He put out a statement yesterday, a weak one, actually, but there was no voice and there was no video. It was a written statement. He called for unity. Apparently killing tens of thousands of protesters is his kind of unity. Iran has plenty of cameras and plenty of voice recorders. Why a written statement? I think you know why. His father, dead. He's scared, he's injured, he's on the run, and he lacks legitimacy. It's a mess for them. Who's in charge? Iran may not even know. With every passing hour, we know, and we know they know, that the military capabilities of their evil regime are crumbling. They can barely communicate, let alone coordinate. They're confused, and we know it. Our response? We will keep pressing. We will keep pushing, keep advancing. No quarter, no mercy for our enemies.
Well, that is all for Primetime. Please do join us again on Monday for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, have a great weekend.